A thriving empire didn't collapse overnight. It engineered its own downfall. The Maya had everything: advanced mathematics, sophisticated astronomy, monumental cities. Yet within a century, the most powerful civilization in Mesoamerica simply vanished. Today, we're exploring what historians got wrong about the Maya collapse. The real story isn't about a single catastrophe. It's a cascade of decisions that turned a thriving civilization into ghost cities. And the evidence is haunting. If you could predict when your city would fail, would you? The Maya actually could, and they didn't act. Here's why. Imagine one day your city is thriving, temples gleaming, markets bustling, scholars debating mathematics. The next day, it's abandoned. For centuries, historians bought this narrative. The Maya collapsed suddenly, mysteriously, catastrophically. The truth is far more revealing. The classic Maya collapse wasn't sudden at all. It unfolded over a century, with elites watching civilization fragment and choosing not to intervene. This wasn't divine punishment or outside invasion. It was systematic self-destruction. The evidence doesn't hide. We simply weren't reading it correctly. Once you see the real pattern, the collapse becomes inevitable. Slow collapses are hardest to reverse because they feel manageable at each step. Picture a farmer checking his fields in AD 800. Rain is light this year. By 825, the sky barely opens. Within decades, rivers dry to trickles, and entire regions transform from agricultural abundance to dust. Paleoclimatologists have reconstructed ancient rainfall using tree rings and lake sediments, and the data is stark. The southern lowlands experienced a mega-drought lasting roughly 200 years during the collapse period. But here's the gut punch. Droughts happened before, and the Maya adapted brilliantly. This one was different. It arrived when populations were maxed out, when forests were already depleted, when political systems were already fracturing. Drought didn't cause collapse alone. It weaponized the failures already baked into their system. Environmental stress becomes catastrophic when systems are already stretched thin. What happens when a civilization needs more wood than forests can produce? The Maya found out. Between AD 250 and 900, they cleared roughly 80% of their lowland forests, cutting for construction, burning for lime mortar, clearing for agriculture. Archaeologists have traced this through pollen records and charcoal layers buried in soil. The problem wasn't the chopping itself, it was the cascade. Fewer trees meant less rainfall in an already drying climate. Exposed soil eroded faster. Wetlands that once buffered water shortages vanished. The Maya didn't just lose timber, they dismantled the ecosystem that sustained them. When drought hit, there was nothing left to absorb the shock. Resource extraction becomes lethal when you strip away natural buffers against crisis. By AD 800, Maya city-states were at war constantly. Not grand battles for conquest, but bloody raids for captives, tribute, and prestige. Inscriptions on stelae brag about victories. Skeletal remains show mounting violence. But here's the brutal logic. As resources dwindled, cities competed more fiercely. As competition escalated, they militarized, pulling farmers from fields to fight. As farmland was abandoned, food production crashed. As hunger spread, raiding intensified to capture slaves and food. Each cycle tightened the noose. Tikal, Copan, Calakmul, once rival powers, collapsed into a feedback loop they couldn't break. The warfare didn't cause collapse. It was collapse eating itself alive. Scarcity-driven competition accelerates decay when systems lack resilience. Here's what's striking. The Maya elite saw this coming. Astronomical records show they tracked climate patterns, predicted famine, understood the risks, yet they doubled down on the exact behaviors destroying them. If you're curious why intelligent people make self-defeating choices, and why modern civilizations might be doing the same, stick around. Never underestimate what leaders will sacrifice to save face. By AD 800, Maya kings were obsessed with one thing: displaying power through monumental construction and lavish ceremonies. Palaces grew while resources shrank. As drought bit harder, you'd expect elites to reduce consumption, pool resources, adapt. Instead, they escalated. More temples, more feasts, more warfare, to capture tribute for elaborate displays. It was denial masquerading as leadership. Meanwhile, commoners starved. Bureaucrats fractured into rival factions, fighting for scraps of authority. The system that unified city-states, the king as cosmic conduit, became a liability. When the center couldn't hold, everything collapsed inward. Institutions collapse when elites prioritize status over survival. Imagine you're a farmer with 3 mouths to feed. Your field yields half what it did 5 years ago. Your king demands tribute. Your neighbor is starving and considering banditry. There's nowhere else to go. Your city is surrounded by other desperate Maya settlements. This was reality by AD 850. The southern lowlands had reached carrying capacity, roughly 2 million people, sustained by marginal agriculture in a climate already turning hostile. 1 bad year was manageable. 2 decades of drought wasn't. Skeletal remains show malnutrition skyrocketing. Burials reveal violence, increasing sharply. The population that had built civilization became a weight it couldn't carry. Carrying capacity isn't just an ecological concept, it's a hard limit every system faces. The Maya understood cycles. They tracked celestial patterns across centuries, built calendars so precise they're still accurate today, recorded droughts in their written records. Yet when crisis arrived, they paralyzed. Cognitive scientists call this the normalcy bias, the assumption that conditions will remain stable. For the Maya elite, admitting collapse meant admitting their divine mandate had failed. Their entire authority rested on being cosmic intermediaries. Acknowledging resource depletion, environmental breakdown, or systemic failure would have stripped them of legitimacy. So they doubled down on ritual, on displays of power, on the behaviors that were killing them. Knowledge and action aren't the same thing. Sometimes knowing the future just makes the denial more elaborate. Systems collapse not from ignorance, but from institutional paralysis in the face of truth. Here's the revelation most accounts bury. Not all Maya cities fell. Cities in the north, Chichen Itza, Mayapan, smaller settlements, persisted and even thrived while the south collapsed. What was different? Flexibility. Northern cities diversified their agriculture, developed trade networks beyond their immediate region, maintained political autonomy instead of consolidating power. When drought hit the heartland, northern settlements adapted. They shifted crops, drew water from cenotes, traded across the peninsula. Smaller, decentralized networks survived where monolithic empires failed. The Maya civilization didn't vanish. It transformed and dispersed. The tragedy wasn't extinction, it was the collapse of the specific system that had built Tikal and Copan. Resilience comes from flexibility and distributed systems, not concentration of power. Here's what haunts me about the Maya collapse. We're living through the same cascade. Forests shrinking while climate destabilizes. Political systems fracturing under resource pressure. Elites performing prosperity while infrastructure rots, populations straining against carrying capacity. The difference? We have records, satellite data, climate models, centuries of documented history. We can see the Maya collapse in precise detail, yet we're repeating it anyway. Not out of ignorance, out of the same institutional paralysis that seized their elites. We know. We're choosing not to act at scale. The Maya didn't have blueprints from a fallen civilization to learn from. We do, and we're ignoring them. That's not inevitable. It's a choice we remake every single day. Historical repetition isn't destiny. It's what happens when societies prioritize present comfort over future survival. The collapse of the Maya wasn't a mystery or a curse. It was the logical endpoint of a system that ignored its own limits. Drought, deforestation, warfare, elite denial, overpopulation. These weren't separate catastrophes. They were feedback loops that reinforced each other until the system broke. The cities fell silent, not because the Maya were primitive or doomed, but because they made rational decisions within systems that rewarded short-term status over long-term survival. And the most chilling part? We understand this now. We've studied it. We have the data. Yet we're constructing the same feedback loops in real time. The question isn't whether collapse is possible, it's whether we'll act before we answer it. This video examines historical and archaeological evidence around Maya collapse. For deeper scholarship, explore works by Jared Diamond, Lisa Lucero, and ongoing research from the American Philosophical Society and University of Pennsylvania's Penn Museum.